How will you contribute not just to the MBA classroom, but also to the community of your future business school? Now, that's a question that the Wharton School has explicitly asked applicants in recent years. You'll be surrounded by lots of super smart, open-minded, very ambitious classmates. They'll come from all over the US, they'll come from all over the world, different academic backgrounds, industry experiences. And I guess with an average GMAT score of 732, the admissions team's confident that you're going to thrive and flourish with the core curriculum. But what else will you bring to such an engaged and vibrant community during your 2 years in Philadelphia? Well, to answer that question, my guest for Center Court is Rochelle Dubrovsky. Rochelle spent 6 years with JP Morgan after completing her undergrad BBA at UC Berkeley. She started the Wharton MBA in September 2023, one of three cohorts every year that placed Wharton as the first M7 school to achieve gender balance. She's the president of the Wharton Women in Investing Club, a TA for VC in the finance and innovation. Clearly, she contributes to the Wharton community. It's wonderful to have you with us, Rochelle. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I gave a very brief introduction, and the fact that now we're just already a few months from graduation, have the last 18 months gone by incredibly quickly?
It's been the quickest and craziest experience for sure. I feel like I spent so much time, studying, preparing, applying, thinking about the decision, and the fact that I'm almost done is a really crazy thing to think about.
You were already enjoying a very successful career with JP Morgan Chase. Um, the idea of then going back to school, was that something that you'd had in your mind? What led you to pursue a return to business school?
Yeah, I had always considered going to business school, and it was something that I had really been working towards, but I felt like I needed to go when it was the right kind of point in my career. And I never really consciously chose to work at a bank. I didn't really know what I wanted to do coming out of undergrad. I knew I wanted to try living on the East Coast, and I knew that I was good with numbers. And so that's why I ended up joining JP Morgan. And I felt like business school gave me an opportunity to really reassess what the next phase of my career looked like. But it was a very challenging decision because at the point when I was deciding, I was already a vice president at JP Morgan. I was already managing a team. I had a very clear career trajectory, a strong network. And so it definitely felt like a risk. And so it's something that I spent a lot of time thinking about.
You were perhaps holding the sort of position that many MBA graduates would aspire to as they come out of school, perhaps compared to undergrad. Did that decision making, did it feel far more intentional with the experience that you'd had and then really wanting to sort of take stock and think about where the next chapters of your life would take you?
Definitely. I feel like going into undergrad, I was making decisions not based on career aspirations because I didn't really know what I wanted to do yet. It was more based on geography and the size of the school and things like that. I think here it was definitely more intentional. I felt like an MBA pays dividends in the long run. And so I really thought that there would be value over time, even though it felt like a short-term risk, even after I made the decision to go to school and started school, because you obviously don't know how things are going to pan out.
Now, I'm going to take advantage of the fact that you're very good with numbers. Because you can crunch the numbers, you could look at the financial opportunity cost, the ROI of going back to school. Are there maybe less tangible metrics now that you've almost completed the program? It's like, yeah, I couldn't put a number on that, but wow, am I glad that I've had that experience or a confidence perhaps that I didn't have before?
Yeah, I think it's given me an opportunity to really pressure test things that I'm good at and things that I'm not good at. I think I've met a lot of people that I never would have met otherwise. I've had a lot of incredible experiences traveling with classmates and opportunities that I wouldn't have had otherwise. But I think the really tangible benefits from alumni that I've spoken to come over time. And so they're not always realized right away because it's really the network of people that, I know now so many people that are going to be successful in their various career journeys. And if I need something down the line, I know I have a huge network to kind of fall back on. And so I think even now it'll take more time for me to really realize the full ROI, but I feel like there's so much opportunity.
Right. Tell us about the learning experience. People might say, well, isn't Wharton just a very quant-driven institution? As you look at the core curriculum, but certainly as you can then personalize the program through electives and other opportunities. So What's the course load like?
Yeah, I think the great thing about Wharton is that you get to really personalize, as you said, your own journey. And so, yes, we definitely have core classes that we have to take, and we have to do statistics, we have to do economics, but those provide a good foundation for kind of the rest of your classes. But beyond that, a lot of it is your own journey that you can decide. And so there are a lot of finance classes. I did end up majoring in finance, but I also am majoring in entrepreneurship and innovation. And so those are very different classes. Learning about AI is one of the classes I'm in right now, negotiations. And so there are people that never touch a finance class beyond the core that we're required to take. And they're really here to learn more operational aspects, management aspects, whatever it is. And so I do think the great part about Wharton is that we have a lot of flexibility about what classes we take and also when we take them.
When you show up on the first day, I mean, there's the core. There are countless clubs, activities, and then electives. Um, do you need to be able to prioritize?
Yes. That is my biggest piece of advice for anyone going into business school is to think about those priorities before you come to campus because the second you get here, as you said, you could be doing any one event at any one time. And so you really have to think about what are your priorities and check in with those. And I also think priorities shift every quarter, every semester, as recruiting becomes more important, or making friends becomes more important, or academics become more important. And so I think learning what those priorities are and reassessing them is really critical. Even though I came in with priorities, the first semester was still very overwhelming. And at the end of it, I kind of reassessed and figured out like, okay, this isn't sustainable. So what am I going to kind of pull back in and what am I going to focus in?
Right. I mentioned as we started the session on the essay question, how will you contribute to the Wharton community? How do all of these different clubs and travel and everything, how do they contribute both, no doubt, to friendships and classmates, but also your own personal and professional development?
Yeah, I think Wharton's a very big school, and so I think part of all of these different opportunities gives you a way to meet people in different environments. And so, I joined Wine Club, and it's a club that I actively participate in, but I've met a lot of people that I wouldn't have met in classes because they have different interests or whatnot. And so I think the clubs provide a great way to make such a large community feel a lot smaller. And then I think all of the other aspects of the program as well, like you mentioned, travel, I think it is a very critical part of the Wharton culture, I would say. But it does bring you much closer together. You're traveling with people that sometimes you know well, but sometimes you don't know well at all. And I've formed a lot of great friendships through trips. And I think that really contributes a lot. And, there's students that are from countries abroad and they bring students back with them and be able and show them their country from their own experience and their own eyes, which I think is really incredible.
Yeah. I guess there's also the Lauder program, which has that entire international dimension. And though you weren't in Lauder, are they then having taken separate courses and opportunities for global travel?
Yeah, so I think travel kind of falls into two buckets. One is more personal, fun travel, and so there's people that plan various trips, big group trips, smaller group trips. But then Wharton also offers these global immersion programs and courses. I actually did one this past winter break. I went to India for about 10 days, and so the trips allow you to get class credit and also go to a country to learn about either a certain topic or just kind of the economy and society at large. So with India, it was just learning about the economy, what's changing, speaking to business leaders. And so it's a really interesting way to travel with classmates, with a Wharton professor, and learn about a country that interests you while also getting to explore it.
Right. Now, the professors are accompanying you to South Asia, but there's an entire team in the Career Management Center that's also accompanying you. When do you start to work with them and think about maybe the summer internship and then the steps that will lie beyond that as you think about future career options?
Yeah, I think at the very beginning, they come and kind of explain what the options are that they can provide to you. And I think the way that students engage with career management really varies depending on what their career path or journey is. And so I recruited for a venture capital internship, which is a very, Wharton calls it enterprise recruiting path, which is really just self-driven. And so I leveraged career management more so for resume prep and kind of flushing out ideas. And then really relied on the community and the network at Wharton and the Wharton Women in Investing Club to actually help me reach out to companies, prep for interviews, etc. But students that are doing more of a mature recruiting process where there's a formal application and companies come to campus, career management is very involved and helpful in actually kind of helping you prep for those interviews and answering any questions that you may have.
Right. I mean, you said earlier, it's a big school. It has more, I think, areas of research than any other business school in the world. I mean, sometimes I think, wow, you can do anything. Healthcare management, of course, it's a world-class program. Real estate, finance, no doubt. Retail, Warby Parker style, and then the whole innovation and entrepreneurship piece. Now, entrepreneurship has been one of your focuses. Have you perhaps you had no point of comparison, but it's something that you can really feel is part of the fabric of the program, sort of innovation and entrepreneurship?
Definitely, I think, and it depends on the pockets of Wharton that you kind of exist in, but I think there is a very large entrepreneurial ecosystem, a lot of students that are building while they're at school. And the school has been leaning into that as well. I mean, there's a lot of AI research happening at Wharton as well, and a lot of, I think they're starting an AI major, and I've been able to take some really interesting classes. And Wharton also has a venture lab that a lot of the entrepreneurs can get resources. There's accelerator programs and whatnot through there. And I was engaged with the venture lab through a startup consulting experience that I did my first year, and now I'm an advisor. And so I think for students that are interested in entrepreneurship, there's definitely a large community. There's, multiple clubs that also focus on that space. And, the entrepreneurs really work together and to solve problems and help each other out.
Right. Um, you've done a lot of planning, a lot of thinking, you're preparing to apply to business school, and now you're living this experience. Is there anything that was really unexpected or a real surprise, maybe even something that you learned about yourself?
Yeah, so I mentioned travel, and I knew going into Wharton that travel was a big part of the experience, but I honestly didn't fully appreciate what that meant to live day to day. And so I have probably traveled less than all of my classmates, but everyone, all of my friends and family in the quote unquote real world think I'm always traveling. And so I think just recognizing that the social component of Wharton is so important and really a big underpinning of the overall experience. I think I knew, but I didn't fully appreciate it until I was here on the ground. And so I think when we were talking about prioritization, that was something that I kind of had to reassess because there was a lot more opportunities for travel than I was anticipating and a lot more of those kind of social interactions. And so I think that was my biggest surprise coming to Wharton, and I just kind of had to adjust along the way.
Right. With the experience that you've had, you'd already reached VP, and saying, finding the right time. I'm sure that's a very personal question for everybody. But there was a report that came out this week that said, job mobility, people are quitting their jobs at a lower rate than any time we've seen in recent years, a reflection of the economy. But there you are giving up a great position to invest in yourself and to go back to school. So the final question, for all of our viewers from around the world, they're thinking about going and getting an MBA, perhaps Wharton in particular. What advice would you have for them?
Yeah, I think it's something that I mentioned before about prioritization, but I think it's really understanding the why, because I think there's so much opportunity at Wharton and it's such a fast 2 years that you really need to come into school with a real understanding of why you're getting your MBA and what you plan to get out of it, because otherwise you could blank and it's over and you didn't really maximize what you got out of the program. And so I think being intentional going in about, okay, what is the next phase of my career and what are the most important things that I need to get out of the experience to get there, I think is the most critical because it's an overwhelming 2 years. There's a lot going on, and being able to focus yourself a little bit coming into it, I think is really great.
Well, thank you for sharing your why with us. Look forward to graduation, precious final months. I would let the wine club be involved in the post-graduation party. I think that would be a great idea.
Yes, they did have a good one last year, so hopefully they do it again.
Great. Rochelle, thank you so much for joining us at Centre Court. It was a real
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you. It was great talking to you.